she surely would want to be seen as the most qualified nominee, not the most qualified black woman nominee. I think it undermines public faith, not just in the nominees, but the courts themselves. Joining us now is April Preyar. She is an attorney out of Chicago. April, thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. So tell me, do you think I'm getting something wrong here?
I do. I think that the simple answer is it's time, because Black women have contributed so much, not just to the Democratic Party, not to just saving the last couple of elections, but also to the country as a whole. And if Black people make up about 14.2% of the nation, why don't we see ourselves reflected in the judiciary? So I think it's simply a matter of time, and whoever his candidate is, whoever the pick is, nominee, I should say, whoever Biden's nominee is, you already know that their credentials will be impeccable because they're being considered for the highest court. So I think it's an unnecessary argument to believe that because he pledged that someone of a particular race and gender would be placed in a role, that they are therefore unqualified.
Right. Well, look, let me be very clear about what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. I am not suggesting, therefore, the person's unqualified or that the person will be perceived as unqualified. What I'm saying is that by Biden promising this ahead of time, that the gender and the race of the person is predetermined, that inevitably that person, when that person gets on the bench, has to be seen as the Black woman choice and not just as the most qualified choice. And as I made it very clear, there are very highly qualified Black women choices out there. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, to those very highly qualified Black women choices, there is something that's kind of insulting, I think, about President Biden confining himself in this way, and thereby they are stuck with, as opposed to their achievements, some of which I just laid out, they're stuck with this sense of, I was picked within that pool. Your response?
My response would be, what is far more insulting is that we've been overlooked this long. And the fact that anytime any other nominee has been proposed, the assumption would be that that person was white and male. And there was never a question then saying, oh, because he's white and male, are we overlooking other qualified candidates who are indigenous? Are we overlooking other candidates who might be Black, who might be Latinx? No, that's never the case. It's always the assumption that because he has been nominated by the president, that person is qualified. And I don't think that's a valid argument to believe that simply because Biden said in advance that my pick will be Black and female, that she's not going to be the best pick. Just like he did the same thing with the vice presidential nominee, he said in advance that she would be Black and female, and then people were guessing which pool of women would he draw from, and the same arguments were made.
But you know, as an attorney, right, there's something different when it comes to the court than politics, right? In politics, that's the way we live. That's what politics is. We would hope that the court wouldn't have that same political, you can either call it stink or sensibility or whatever it is around it. And again, I am not saying that he should be in any way second-guessed for picking a Black woman. I am saying, and therefore I'm not saying that people are going to say, oh, look at all these other people who were overlooked. What I'm saying is that he's done the undermining by making this pledge before, and now he's got to deliver on that. And it sounds to me like you don't view that as a concern. I think it's fair to say.
No, I don't. And I think that there's this assumption that because the courts in the United States should be fair and there should be no issues of race, but we know that that's not the case even in the lowest courts. I know that anytime I walk into a courtroom, it's going to be assumed that I am there to play any other role other than to be an attorney. I know that the road to becoming a Black female attorney is a very uphill battle. In fact, we are only 1.78% of the entire bar. So I am excited, and I do not apologize for being excited that Biden has said in advance that he is going to nominate a Black woman, because again, like I said at the very beginning, it is time.
Yeah. And if there, again, to give you a hypothetical, since there's never been an Asian American, a Pacific Islander, et cetera, if President Biden had come out and said, my next pick is going to be an AAPI representative, you would think that too is the way he should be pursuing this, as opposed to pausing, waiting till he gets the next one, and then picking someone, if he wants to, who's AAPI.
No, I don't have a problem with him announcing it in advance. I would be just as elated if it was an Asian American who was being nominated for the bench the next go round, because again, the judiciary should reflect the people that they represent. They should reflect the people that they serve. And that is simply not the case. So if there are groups that are not represented on the highest court of the land, that needs to be changed. And I commend Joe Biden for taking that step.
And I hear you on that point. I think that the area where we disagree is on the announcement ahead of time. And I think that does a disservice to the people who he's been picking. And I've said this about other federal judicial nominations that the Biden administration has pursued, that in their announcements, they focus much more on the sexuality, on the country of origin, on the race, on the gender, than they are on the qualifications. I hope that whenever this person gets nominated, that their qualifications become the focus of the administration, And I'm blaming them for the way they have been positioning this, not on the decision itself. You want to have a final word on that?
Well, yeah, the final word would be representation matters. And that's not just some catchy hashtag. It's a matter of, just like any time a jury is called, a judge says to that jury, you are to not leave your experience and your common sense at the door of the courthouse. You're to bring that in with you. It's no different for a jurist. And so if the jurists all look alike and all have a similar background, then that is going to be reflected in their decisions. And so I have no problem with Joe Biden saying in advance, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to appoint someone from a different background, and letting us know in advance that he has earmarked a spot for someone who is going to reflect a different experience.
Yeah, and I guess where we differ is I think that does them a disservice. But April Preyar, it's a good conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.